All right, we are on our worksheet for section 2.4, and we're going to take a look at this first question before we actually do any of the content, because this one's kind of a warm-up question. Just a reminder that when you are working through these worksheet problems, you really should be trying the questions first on your own, and then kind of using the video as guide to give you hints, and then watching the full solution at the end after you've tried the question, because it's important for you to get that experience of trying out the questions and working through the content that way. So this one really is intended to be a warm-up question, just to get your brain kind of thinking about the types of ideas that we're going to be talking about here. So I'll give you my thought process of how I got through it. But it says make up two sets, A and B, so that A union B has 10 elements and A intersect B has 4 elements. So we're going to try and create those two different things. We need to create A and B so that the union has 10 elements and the intersection has 4 elements. Now, if we think about it, well, we have to think about what those two things are. The union says when you kind of lump or group the entire two sets together, the new set you get will have 10 elements. So between the two, we should have 10 unique elements total. The intersection is the overlap between the two sets. So we need to have 4 elements that show up in both of the sets. So for instance, we might use just the numbers 1, 2, 3, and 4 as our 4 common elements. Let's see if I can write these in order. 1, 2, 3, 4. So notice if I keep those as the only common elements, then we'll have that the intersection has a total of 4 elements. Now let's start to try and add more elements so that the union between the two has 10 elements. Now remember that unions only take into account unique elements, right? If it's an element of both, it gets added, which is cool. But then also if it's an element of either one. So notice my union already has 4 elements in it. It already has 1 through 4. So then we might say want to add like an element 5. But notice I only want to add it to one of the sets so that it doesn't end up in the intersection. So we could add like 5 and 6. We could keep adding the rest all to A. I could jump down and instead put some of them in B. So like 7, we could put 8 back up here, 9 down in B, and say 10 down in B. Now, just to check, let's find those intersections and unions. So A union B says take any element that's an element of either of them. So 1 is in them, and 2, and 3, and 4. We see a 5, a 6, a 7, an 8, a 9, and a 10. And when we join those two sets together, and remember, things like 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, we only write once in my union set because it just matters that it is an element, not how many times it showed up. So that part worked. We have A union B has 10 elements. And then if we take a look at A intersect B, well, these are only the elements common to both sets. So we see 1 is common to both, and 2, and 3, and 4. And then we were very careful with our other elements to notice none of them overlap. None of them are common to the other ones. So we do indeed have 4 elements in our intersection. Now there are tons of examples that you could have come up with this. So I could have put, like I said, if I wanted, I could have put all of 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 in set A and added none of them to B. That would have been fine. I didn't have to use numbers. I could have used letters or words or anything that we wanted that were distinct elements. So there's tons of ways that we could have come up with these two sets, but this is just one example of a solution. So like if you had something different, which you should on your worksheet that you turn in, you should try and come up with a different solution than what mine is. So you should have your solution. But a good thing to do is like what I did down here, where you make sure that you check it works. to see that those actually have those two conditions satisfied. So this is going to help us with the rest of our section now, where we're going to start to talk about number of elements in different sets.